excited to talk to you because you know the space well. You've seen it develop. The question to kick us off. One of the big stories this year is YouTube has obviously been huge for years, but it is now becoming such a big player on connected television. How has that changed the general TV market for yourself?
Yeah, I think really YouTube is often underestimated given the size they are in connected TV. And I think for us, the biggest thing that it's changed is just giving us more choice. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to connect our clients' brands with consumers via video, and the more choices and the more ability to get an ad-supported message against our clients' business, the better. So for us, it's just giving us another choice and another choice at scale. It's actually very hard to get scale right now on the connected space because it's so fragmented. So the more scale we get within a partner, the better. The more we're able to do complex targeting, the better. And YouTube continuing to grow in the connected TV space and the biggest screen in the home is actually a good thing for advertisers, just to give us more choice, more scale, and more of an ability to reach more people.
Now, on that note, do you find it's still debated? I think it's sometimes client by client, whether that is TV or not, whether that is should be weighed up against all the other big guys on the big screen. Where do you sit on that, debate if there is one?
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't say everyone sits here, but I sit where it's TV. It's TV. Yeah. I think, we can't sit in our ivory towers and decide what is TV and not TV. To the consumers, we're trying to sway with an advising message. So the consumer sees it as TV and they want to watch it.
If it's their favorite stuff, which it often is.
If they love, then it is TV and we should treat it as such.
YouTube overall has continued to have an important role, I think, for all of our partners. When you think about viewership at large, what people I always kind of surprise and delight people with this quote, but I think 60 to 70% of YouTube viewership is actually on the big screen at home. So when you think about the use of streaming services and you think about how consumers are connecting to what they view and where they view it, YouTube has still I would say, one of the largest share of voices across streaming services. And they have it with consumers who are leaning back in their couch, watching it on the big screen. And so I think it's important, has continued to scale, especially as YouTube has leaned into live sports to capture market share and all sorts of other goodies.
Yeah, I think it changes it pretty fundamentally. I think for any client that comes in the door, we're definitely considering YouTube alongside TV partners and media companies that operate from a legacy standpoint. It does come down to the audience, but it's hard to argue that your audience isn't on YouTube at this point. Like you said, 10% of TV time spent. And that's neck and neck with some of the leading media companies. If you look at those Nielsen charts like Disney and NBC Universal. And also when you stack it up against other digital video players, far ahead of Amazon Prime, ahead of Hulu, ahead of even Netflix, and that doesn't get into their ad-supported tier. So couple that with the strength of Google's data, and that's something we also really take into consideration, as well as the different ways to optimize YouTube inventory. So it doesn't just have to be reach campaigns. You could pair that with campaigns that understand who's going to a person's optimizes to an event on someone's website and really drive someone not only for reach and recall against the brand, but also if they're taking action and following through with some sort of a action on an advertiser website. So it's pretty critical to consider alongside all those different media partners, and the cost of entry is typically less. So, when we do get a video budget, especially from a challenger brand, it's pretty often that we're suggesting to go hard on YouTube because you could spread your wings pretty quickly and efficiently there. Versus TV.
It's not as hard as it would have been trying to crack the big networks back in the day. You can get in with a smaller budget and still have something meaningful.
YouTube is, I don't throw this cliche around lightly, but they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I don't know if that's actually what gorillas weigh or not, but never the point remains that you can't necessarily have a meaningful conversation around advertising in a connected television ecosystem without some consideration and discussion of where YouTube fits in. And I think there's two distinct categories or elements to this that warrant discussion. The first is, of course, YouTube TV, which, as I understand it, to be the largest vMVPD streaming platform.
Surprised a lot of people with how big it's gotten.
Absolutely. Gangster moves, like going out and outbidding everybody for the NFL Sunday ticket, right?
Yep.
But then we also need to acknowledge the fact that YouTube traditional user-generated shorter form type platform that we're all accustomed to using on our mobile devices is now being consumed on large screen television devices at staggering rates, such that when a connected television advertiser aspires to engage with their target audiences on the living room television, you need to acknowledge the role that YouTube traditional content plays when being streamed on the big screen device. So those are the two things that I think are most prominent and relevant as it relates to kind of YouTube's role in the CTV space.
Yeah, it's incredibly interesting as we think about, how it's ultimately worked and really the evolution, because as you start to think about it, YouTube becoming an initial player bought for $1 billion and now generates $1 billion a day.
Yeah.
It's a pretty wonderful setup that they've got, and Alphabet has to feel pretty good about that investment. What you start to see and really, are they a player in CTV? How big of a player are they? They've got dominant viewership. Like, you look at it, absolutely dominant viewership. Nielsen thinks about them as a dominant player in streaming. We've got them from how they're starting to organize their ad offerings to match it, because the environment is different than traditional YouTube and some of their structure. And
Right.
so you start to watch this and say, all right, well, where are they and how do they sit? And I think they're second behind Netflix in terms of streaming. So there's this massive position that we need to simply recognize in the ways that it's functioning within CTV and how the opportunities are being brought to, partners like us.
Do you still find yourself, I think this varies a lot across in the industry and what clients, where to put them is a discussion. Are they, because they've come up in a certain way, they weren't television to start, and they're crashing the party, and their content's different than a lot of what's on television traditionally. Are they, do you still have these debates about where they go, how to fund them and what they should be used for?
It's the debates are lessening, shall we say. The primary is really the orientation around success metric first. And then, who fits into those various piles themselves. Because you're right. YouTube wasn't a traditional player in what you would deem a television-like environment. It was heavy UGC. It was a whole lot of, anyone can upload anything at any time. And then all of a sudden you start to watch partners like Saturday Night Live, right? And NBC start to put their content into
That's
YouTube.
how people watch Fallon and Kimmel now and all those things, right? Like,
all of them. It's really I simply want to choose how I access the information. And I think the ability and the recognition of the makers, that YouTube has these plays and that YouTube has this presence, and it's one of the places that people want to access, I think becomes incredibly important.